Welcome to the Global Real Estate and Entrepreneurship Podcast. I am delighted beyond words and tickled and a little bit afraid to introduce my beloved guest, the man, the myth, the legend, um, Juno nominee and former cast president, comedian extraordinaire, and my brother, Monty Scott. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be here. I'm excited to be here. Um, it's been great watching your podcast grow, and like I say, it's nice to be here. And as I'm known in the family, the good-looking one.
And so the jokes begin. If anyone is wondering what it's like growing up with a comedian,
Yes.
it is filled with hijinks,
Hmm.
many
And
laughs.
Sorrow and jazz hands.
Yeah, sorrow
Uh,
and jazz hands.
yes, yes.
It's a mind dream. Well,
Yes.
just to bring people in on it a little bit, because he's invited here as an entrepreneur, not as a comedian today. So
No,
let's get that straight right off the
all serious.
all of the hopper.
Hmm. Serious entrepreneurialism is what we're talking about.
Yes,
Nothing
yes,
comedic.
absolutely. I was like,
Hmm.
but a little bit of a background and where my fear comes in is I have been witness to this man roast a bride by calling her a goofy bastard. Attended that one.
But that was a good one. Everyone agreed that was a great time.
Oh God, I've never wanted to crawl under a table more in that moment.
Hmm. The
Um,
bride liked it, I think, but
she
sometimes
did, amazingly
mhm,
enough. The bride
mhm.
liked it.
See,
I
that's
did not.
you gotta be charming for that.
You gotta be good looking to pull that off.
You gotta be good looking and charming. That's what you need.
Uh,
Uh,
I was also there upon seeing a good friend's baby for the first time when he told the new parents that she looked like Darth Vader with the helmet off. Uh,
I did, and that was what I might not do again. But at the same time, listen, it's a baby. They grow out of it. It's like if the kid was 5 years old and I was like, he looks like Darth Vader, that'd be wrong.
defense, this guy was a great friend of both of
Hmm.
ours, and
Hmm.
Monty's in particular, and he took it like a champion. He laughed so hard at that. I
Hmm.
wanted to go invisible. I think
Yeah. Well, I didn't know how people were sensitive about babies, but at the same time, um,
we were new to babies.
it
We
was
didn't.
it was correct, and that's why he laughed because he was like, "Well, it's true because well, the kid's gonna grow out of it." It was my point. I was not.
Oh my God, you're standing by it. That's
Mhm.
even worse. But
Well, I
it's
stand by it, but I mean that might have been I might not do it again. Is what I'm saying.
yeah, it was a little too real
That
for
won't be my baby comment.
parents
It wasn't my baby comment from now on.
to stop roasting babies.
I would yes, that
So
was perhaps a mistake, but at the same time, again, correct, and that's why he enjoyed it.
yeah, and I don't know why people keep asking you to toast them and to do different things because every time it comes out as a roast. Like it's funny.
Because of my rapist wit.
I won't be asking for that ever. I'll be like, tell my
No.
daughter, do not let this man eulogize me. Although
Well, fair enough, Nicole. I, I won't be insulted.
see, I
Uh,
can't take the truth. I can't
yeah,
take
no, that's fair enough.
this
I
real
wouldn't.
person.
I'm not a eulogist for everyone.
Even on a birthday. I was like, I can't take that
Uh,
on a birthday.
mm, well, I wasn't. Again, I'm not even roasting anything. I'm just trying to say funny things. I'm not even a good roaster because I no,
Oh my God.
because I'm not good at like making fun of people specifically. Those are just offhanded things I'm saying for fun.
Well, that's
I,
the
yeah.
crazy. You're a natural roaster. That's the only
No, no, because I
job to
don't
roast.
I don't spend all day thinking about people's flaws seems trivial to me.
Maybe
Uh
that's why it comes out like you're trying to compliment them.
this is what I mean, but I can only do that for a short spurt.
That's what makes it hurt so bad.
I I don't even it won't hurt.
Oh God.
Well, again, the baby thing, I didn't know people were so worried about their kids, you know? Um,
New parents were sensitive about the way their babies look.
no, I thought that was more objective. Like it looks like a baby.
Yeah,
The hell
no,
you want it to look like Mars, you know?
God. Anyway, let's get off the
So,
baby and back on to
okay, yes.
entrepreneurship because we could go down many rabbit
Yes.
holes as a chatty
Hmm.
pair of Scots. Um,
Hmm.
And that's really where entrepreneurship started for us. So our parents, Gary and Sindri Scott, they owned an insurance brokerage in Scarborough, which is a part of East Toronto. In our, as we were growing up. So
The
they,
best part of East Toronto.
yeah, the best part of East Toronto.
Hmm.
Um, Yes, and we were, so we had our parents in the home all the time and they worked together. And so entrepreneurship was definitely in our blood. We didn't have parents who went out to work. Um, we saw it happening and they were with us all the time, which that's another trauma story for a different day. From an entrepreneur
Yeah.
perspective, it gave us it gave us freedom, right? We were never I like to say I was raised by anarchists, which just meant to me in the most positive way, like I never felt like I was put in a box. I never felt like I had to, prescribe to a certain type of way to make my money or live my life by what the man or society says. And I think we both have lived, through multiple streams of income as entrepreneurs in our lives.
Mhm.
One of those things that is the core of both what I do and what has funded Monty's passion is real estate. So real estate has really played a key role in both of our lives. So that's sort of what I want to sort of talk about first off, like getting back to our roots and talking about you, Monty, and you really inspired me. Um, and interestingly enough, the man that mentored you when you were first getting into real estate as a very young person, Rupert DeCastro, who incidentally, my father insured his buildings and homes as an insurance broker. So he was someone that was connected to our family from a business point of view, but then also my mom, being Guyanese, had Guyanese roots and connections to him as well. So he was your mentor early on. And then much later on, when I went into real estate, I worked very closely with Rupert. He was my first mentor. And I actually was the managing brokerage for his Century 21, which was the first Century 21 in Toronto for about 6 years. So, a lot of melding of worlds and people. But talk to us, Monty, a little bit about your early launch into real estate, what that was like, and what that sort of led you and given you an opportunity to do in your life.
Okay. Okay. A few thoughts off the top of what you just said. Yeah, our parents. I would agree with you that our parents were anarchists and that they especially didn't have expectations for you as far as what you wanted to do to live. But they were pretty specific that we had to make cash.
Yes.
So, it didn't really matter how you made cash, even if you were enforcing for the mob. They didn't really care as long as you were making money actively. So that's what they were talking about. But they didn't really care how you did it at all. So it was free of expectations of being a doctor or being, whatever. They did not care.
Yeah.
And they were like, live your life the best way you could, which I think is a good way to raise kids, where you're just like, do what you want, but you best have my money. And so that was
And
that was their yeah.
this is the comedy piece. My parents
Mhm.
did completely legitimate work. They were
Yes.
non-violent humans. They were just
No.
not conventional humans, especially for
Yeah.
their era. Like, and I preface this even like they were a biracial couple in Scarborough, like 50 years ago, when biracialism, like people of mixed
Mhm.
ethnicity in Toronto, that was like new. That was
Yeah,
not.
we're forerunners of being mixed. First of all, to all the mixed people out there, yeah, you're doing it now. Good for you. We did it then. Yeah.
we
And second of all,
Or it was popular
yeah,
in an ethnic area in a very multicultural city.
people didn't know that Guyanese and Scottish people could breed until my parents,
And
until us. Yeah, until
look at
me.
what happened here.
Yeah, beautiful children,
We brought,
insane, beautiful children.
yes,
Now,
tremendous fusion of food. That's the other thing
yes, that's
Scarborough is known for, like
yes.
ridiculous, amazing food.
You know, but well, as a sidebar for Scarborough, the truth is, it is a place for unconventional people because they've vilified it so much for the entirety of our lives that only people that were unconventional would live there. Because you're told like you shouldn't or whatever. You know, it's the same of anywhere that's got a bad reputation. Um, so you get unconventional people living there. So just happenstance, I suppose, that our parents lived there. I don't know, but that is a lot of the populace.
To grow up. It was
Mm.
incredibly diverse.
Hmm.
And like I said, we were diverse within our own home, but there was a diversity of actual all different types of ethnicities that we grew up with, sort of around us, which was fantastic. And the area we were in actually was very Asian, which was
Mm.
awesome, and some amazing food and people. And anyway,
Yeah.
come on, let's get back to real estate.
Well, let's get back to real estate. I own a house in Scarborough, and I encourage everybody who's listening to this to buy a house in Scarborough. How about
Absolutely.
that?
And let me just
Um,
say the average price of a property in Toronto, because Scarborough is just a portion of Toronto, but it's well over $1 million. So
yeah.
for a detached property, you're not getting properties any like much cheaper in Scarborough.
Well, you can buy a house in Toronto if you like not being poor, or you can go somewhere else. No, I mean whatever. But Scarborough's a very I enjoyed living there very much. It's nice. Um, okay, so what we were talking about, our
Okay, let's
parents.
talk about like the how like so 28 years ago,
Mhm.
you launched into real estate, and the average price of a home wasn't $1 million. You were
No,
you were starting out, you had gone into the same profession as dad, into insurance. You were sort
I
of saving
was yes.
money, and you decided to invest in real estate. So talk to us
Mhm.
about like average price and like your thoughts along those lines. And
I didn't have a lot of thoughts. When I went into working full time, I guess I was 19, and I made to me a lot of money because I was used to being a student, so I was used to being poor. So I figure I only need $100 a week, and then I put the rest of it. I don't know what I was making. Very little. It was under $400 after tax. So every
month.
2 weeks, I guess I got 800
Okay.
or so, and so so I guess maybe I made 1,500 a month.
Okay.
But I figured I only needed $400 to live because I was living at our parents' house.
At home.
And so I was like, why don't I save $800 a month
Mm.
out of the 1,500? And my boss was like, "Are you serious?" And I'm like, "Yeah. I mean, what the hell am I gonna do with the rest of it?" So I put that in a mutual fund for maybe towards 3 years. So I ended up with like 40 something thousand, I think it was. And
Nice.
then I took that and I was like, what am I going to do with that? And I didn't know much about, or I didn't care much about real estate, but I knew the prices were low because our house where we grew up was worth like 500 grand. The word was that it was towards that kind of money when there was a big bubble.
Mhm.
And then it was only worth like 200 grand or something. And after that, and prior to that, it was only worth that. So I was like, to me, the price of property was low, which it was because we had a recession in
Yeah, so this is all the
91.
late 90s, right? We're talking about.
No, No, well, I'm talking about 91 and 92 when I started working in maybe 93,
Hmm.
94, and that was recovering from that bubble and the recession. The
Yeah, yeah.
bubble of 1990 property and the recession thereafter. And so this was 97 I bought that house.
Yeah, because I was like, it
But
was a 7-year recession actually when they brought in free trade, right? Once we
I don't know if it was to do with that, but it was, yes, it was a seven. Well, it wasn't a 7-year recession. It was a 7-year recession in property prices. In fact, it was more like a 12-year or 14-year recession in property prices. But it was, I knew they were low. The
Yeah.
prices hadn't really recovered from 1990 much.
Mhm.
So essentially from 1990 to 1997, the property prices were around the same. The interest rates weren't exceptionally low in that my first mortgage was maybe 6% for a number of years, 6 or 7 even, and something around there. Um, I just knew it was a good deal because I bought that first house for 173,000.
Wow.
So it was a good deal, and I knew it was a good deal. So I felt confident. I didn't know much about property, but um, I knew they were a good deal. Like my boss had sold his parents' house, which was like a two-story house in Scarborough, big house, and I was like, dude, you can't. They sold it for like not much more than 200,000. I was like, you can't sell this house. I mean, I was a kid, but I
Mhm.
was like, you can't sell this house for 200,000. Like you just, to me, I was like, you can. So I knew in my head that it was like, that's not the proper value of that their place,
Yeah.
but all of the places, right? I was like, I don't know what they're worth, but they're worth more than what they're selling for right now. So that's I felt confident in that. It was actually the only time I felt confident in real estate or particularly real estate in years is that those years before 2000 and after 2000 I felt they were reasonably priced.
Mhm. And you bought,
Mhm.
good solid investment properties because they were bungalows on large lots that were
Mhm.
duplexes. Were already set up to go with upper and lower, were they not? Maybe one of them wasn't.
One the first one was yes.
The first one was,
Mhm.
yes. And you
Mhm.
see, I remember you at that time, and this is where I was, we can talk about being a landlord, and having investment properties. Like I remember you being a very young man, getting ready to go out on like a Friday night, and a tenant call you with a leak in the basement or some stuff going on at the house, and you just being like super frustrated with that because obviously it's
Mhm.
not wasn't planned. It involved money,
Mhm.
it cost you money, and it impeded you from, going out with your friends and like because you were a young man at the
Mhm.
time. I just remember thinking to myself, this is the cost of doing this. And it took you
Yeah. Mhm.
like I watched you over the years handle that better and better and better. But there was a cost to it, and it took time for you not to like to get that thick skin and not like have it like derail you from what you were doing.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, it's I remember that. No, I mean, I bought that first house when I was 23. I bought the second house when I was before I was 25. So, um, it's young to have that stuff, you know what I mean? And to deal the way we are, we're generally psychopaths. We get angry about things. We had our family, my father has a low frustration tolerance.
This is the
And
Scottishness. There's a Scottish temper. I'm not gonna. The Indian side is
mhm.
not like this as much. It's the
I
Scottish.
don't think we can blame the Indians. No, that's I think that's fair. Because we have a low frustration tolerance, so it takes a while to build up that you're like it's a business and you just have to be you, you're gonna run into frustrations occasionally. And so and like the more houses you have or the more property you have, the more times that'll come up. I mean, that's just the way it is. You got to recognize that, and yeah, it takes a little doing, especially for, oh, there's a problem. It's more money, more problems kind of vibe. Where, I mean, yeah, the more property you have, the more problems you're going to have with it. So it
Yeah.
takes a while to recognize that and just be like, there's going to be some problems, and they won't be on your timetable.
Yeah, and they're like, and I haven't openly talked about this yet online, but I recently went through my own landlord woes last year. And then with the back up in the tribunal,
Oh, I
essentially,
heard about that.
yeah.
Yeah, might have heard about that.
I did not
Not the
handle like
listeners, but yeah.
that was my real reckoning. I had a number of great tenants, and I too am a landlord, and I had some really good tenants for a long time, and I had some people turn on me, and at a bad time. Well, it's never a convenient time to have someone not pay you
No.
or not get out of your house when you properly evict them, or have the tribunal backed up, or have mortgage rates double. Like, damn.
No, the tribunal being backed up is particularly
Never a good time for
weird, and yeah.
a cluster F of things to happen
Hmm.
that we
Hmm.
don't want to have happen. But it wasn't lost on me that as landlords, there's no free money. So when I'm coaching people as to being a landlord, I very much try and give them as much of the real talk as I can and saying like, look, you can it's not free money, and there is a certain amount of pain that you go through by being a landlord.
Well, yes. I mean, it's a business. And listen, if anybody wants to listen to my podcast, my sister's having a hard time with her tenants. I've been running that for about a year and a half, every week. But but beyond that, beyond that, it is that is the truth of it, is that there's no such thing as like just a completely smooth ride, of course. And the more tenants you have, the more chance you're going to have a problem with in any manner. And the it you have to. I found my best way of looking at it was that it's a business, and you have to look at it as such. You can't be like, there's no business that doesn't have a like. What is business except solving a bunch of problems, really?
Yeah. It
And
also takes
you know,
time to build up that thicker skin. I don't really
yeah.
know if there is a way to do it without going through the problems. I don't know if anyone
Uh,
can prepare you
no.
for what problems. Like, I was talking to a younger sort of realtor and property investor, and he was like, I'm gonna have a slush fund of this amount of money, and I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do that. And I'm like, look, like the things that really gut punch you, you never expect. So you can prepare, because I had a number of like things that I prepared for um to not be in the situation I was in last year, and all those things just it didn't work. It was like every plan I had that backed me up so that I wouldn't be vulnerable, let's say, um did not work. So
No, well, I mean, you can't.
it's like insulating yourself and saying like, I'm never going to have a problem because I have like 10 fail safe plans. And it's like, well, if anything I've seen in real estate, and from knowing like Rupert and like people who've been in it for many, many, many years, is that um there are things that happen that you don't anticipate. That's it.
Well, I mean, you can anticipate. You know what? Nicole had rented a house for me a number of times, and she did a very good job, and much more thorough than I did. So, I mean, there's some problems that I could have avoided by being more thorough. But first of all, I was just used to. I mean, I must have evicted at least 10 people over the time of me owning it, property and renting it. But I could have done a better job in that I could have excluded those people from renting my property. But at the time in Scarborough, sometimes the pickings were slimmer,
Yes.
So it wasn't so much of it was my selection process, but part of it was to an extent you have to take what you can get.
Mhm.
And so
I
it
think that
was
you don't want it to be vacant and you need the cash flow. And
forever,
every
right?
month that it goes without cash
Mhm.
flow it's it's not making money. I mean, in Toronto, and thank God for this in the Greater Toronto area, we're really getting a lot in capital appreciation. So it's not so much cash flow. But at the same time, it helps. It helps to cover that mortgage, even if you're just at that time covering a mortgage and you're not in a,
Well, I don't want to be a downer, but I mean, like the capital appreciation is an ebb and flow as well, right? So
yes.
we had many years. That's why when I was buying I was fortunate. And many people in that time period over the like 15 years from 1997, let's say, um, it was undervalued. So you really have nowhere to go but capital appreciation. I don't think that we're in the same market now, but where exactly it is or where is what is market value is different. But you can't always count on capital appreciation. So you have to. I
So we've
think the
been very
best way.
blessed in like both of us have been very blessed in buying at times where we've seen a lot of capital appreciations on the properties that we've purchased.
Yeah, you particularly. Um,
Wow,
but anyway.
you too, man.
Well,
You're
no, but oh,
buying
yes, I mean
clothes
it
for
was
160,000 that are now over a
no,
million dollars. So thank
no.
you.
I just had to wait for 45 years. You had to wait for like two. But anyway, um,
Not jealous at all. Wow. Talk about some healthy competitive.
but you're right. Either way, we're both blessed. It's correct. You know, it's right. And whatever it does, it does. But well, God knows where it is, like the actual value of things, and also, it changes um as Nicole and I were talking about what do you call it, the students or whatever, and their effect of rental properties, and that
Like right now.
affects the
Yeah.
capital appreciation. So it's like small changes you don't know. You're like, oh my God, nobody has an there's so many tenants, not enough housing units, and then it can switch to being like, oh, we're looking for tenants.
Well,
Uh,
yeah, like right now
you
in
know,
the Toronto market, in Ontario, something that they did was that they've really stopped and discouraged foreign students from coming into Ontario. And
no, I think Canada entirely. No,
is it Canada as well?
yeah,
Well, definitely
yeah.
Ontario.
They
And
changed. They changed this. They just cut back on foreign students.
I never would have thought that would have such a big impact, but right now in our rental market in Ontario, they're saying like rents are, at a low for, a number of years, like maybe like a 20-year low or something, which I find hard to believe, but okay.
It's not a low. I mean, obviously not the pricing.
Well, maybe just the vacancy rate, just
Yeah,
their
the vacancy rate. Yeah, the vacancy rate
option.
is probably at a maximum. Yeah.
It also, I mean, let's look at basic supply and demand. When you have when you've got a market that's flooded, your prices are going to go down, right? So you have a market that there's a
Hmm.
high vacancy rate, the actual rents themselves are going down and have
Well,
gone
well,
compared to what they were peaking at.
yeah. The demand to increase the rent is going to go down. Like it probably won't. The price probably won't go down very much, but it won't go up much.
Yeah. So
You know.
interesting. I mean, and
Yeah.
it's not the first time that like we've seen different things happen in the market that you think like I never would have thought that that restriction on foreign students would affect the demand for rentals so much.
I did not have any awareness of it until you mentioned it, and I wouldn't have thought so either. I had lived through that before in maybe 2004 in Toronto. A lot of people, for whatever reason, had bought house. A lot of the good tenants in Scarborough had bought houses for some reason. Maybe the prices were low, whatever. People were jumping into the market then that would be renting otherwise. And
Yeah.
so there was a real drain, and that was a time when the vacancy rate was probably the highest since then.
Mm.
Was probably 2005 or something like that. Because that was the time where I don't blame myself so much for not being the best screener of tenants because you did not have as much options.
Okay, so let's get back on track because this
Mhm.
is something that I will say saved me in my most recent situation. I do my due diligence as a realtor to try and screen people as much as possible, and that involves credit checks and that they have solid jobs and they are who they say they are, and they have a history of good repayment, and they're sort of solid. And the tenants that I had actually, in a strange turn of events, had an investment property and they had very solid jobs that were pensionable jobs with actually the city. So, even though they decided to sort of not pay me for a long period of time, I knew that there was a recourse, that it was a matter of a waiting game because I knew that they had pensions I could garnish and they had a property I could slap a lien on. So, in that circumstance, although you don't expect it to get to that, the fact that I had screened the tenants and had a fairly good quality tenant in the property at that time ended up being what got me my money back. So you can't stop people from and things from happening, but if you try to, when you can, put in the best tenant that you can, you do in a way fail safe yourself a bit.
Well, you were, in fairness to you, you were in a situation that should not have occurred because the province of Ontario has been grossly negligent since the pandemic of having a rental tribunal that's taking, a year, which is absurd.
Yes.
Now, traditionally, the rental tribunal would take 6 weeks, maybe 2 months, and
Yes.
that's not an issue. If somebody doesn't pay and you say, "Hey," you go for the tribunal, and usually they don't have a complaint because they just didn't pay. So you just so essentially rubber stamped, and you can evict somebody in 2 months. And that's not something, if you're operating a rental property and you don't have 2 months extra, that's on you.
Yeah. You should
You're,
have, the ability either with a line of credit or with a slush fund to be able to carry for at least 2 months. Yes.
yeah,
But
not even
in
by
that
question.
circumstance,
Yeah.
and this is the cluster F that happened in Ontario, not just to me, but to many, 20% of
Oh,
landlords who were
it's
in the
absurd.
tribunal, who, for non-payment, which is something that is a no-brainer. Someone doesn't pay, you really shouldn't even have to go to a tribunal for that. But you were looking
Well,
year,
y-
year.
yeah, I mean, probably only 5% of the people that don't pay go to the tribunal.
Right,
It's essentially stamped is the landlord shows up and the tenant doesn't show up because they're like they didn't pay.
right.
Occasionally, somebody will be like, "I can pay," or "I want,"
But that's
and they'll
also where
try
we
to.
saw the phenomenon of, rents had gone up so much that people were, looking at paying a much higher rent than what they were already paying.
Yeah,
And
but if you weren't paying that rent, you know, how do you say, Nicole? You could go F yourself. Um, what the hell? That's why they don't show up, is that if you're not paying, you're not paying, you agreed to pay. Well, what the hell? As much as it's expensive, living is expensive for everyone, but I mean, I think we all agree you can't just live in somebody's domicile in perpetuity and not pay.
yeah, you would think so. But this is people that, and this is where, you're going to see this in all sorts of, this is people just taking advantage of a system and a
Hmm.
backlog. But
Well,
I would
the
say,
backlog was not necessary and it was ridiculous.
yes.
And is ridiculous. The system, in my opinion, is works more or less fine, but the backlog is that's something that you shouldn't come upon, really.
Yeah, and you know what?
Yeah,
I will even chalk that up to a fallout from the pandemic. There's a lot of
I guess so.
unforeseen circumstances in every industry and in lots of areas from the pandemic. So we'll put a pin in
Yeah.
I'll put a pin in that for a minute, um,
Hmm.
because I want to get back to, how real estate. So this was your foundation in real
Hmm.
estate. You bought multiple properties a
Hmm.
while back. You were a landlord. Those properties appreciated. And so now you're coming on 20-year anniversary for comedy being a full-time. And we go back to I remember because my daughter, who is coming up 17, that was the year that Monty went into full-time real estate
Comedy.
comedy.
Hmm.
Sorry.
No.
Yes. And actually, that was the beginning of me being in real estate in some ways, because you were my second tenant. I had
Yes.
I
Now
had it,
we were both not working and we were at the house. That
yeah,
was nice.
which was awesome. It was a very
It
special,
was.
and it gave you an opportunity and me an opportunity to enjoy those babies. Uh,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
be on the same timetable because Monty would be going to shows and coming in after midnight, and I'd be up with a baby
Hmm.
at times. And then so,
Hmm.
and you were able to quit your full-time job. Like, how many years were you in insurance when you quit full-time?
I guess about 15.
Was it that long?
Hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
About maybe 14, 15. Yeah. I think I was yeah, no, I mean,
I thought it was less, but you did that out like
no.
a prison term.
Yeah.
You did that
It
out. You did
was
that out like a prison term.
I did like 16, maybe 16, 17 years I did.
Wow.
Hmm. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Um
I wouldn't think that that
yeah,
would go fast, but I've seen it go fast with my daughter. So
that goes by quicker than you think. That's also if you're incarcerated. It goes by quicker than you think, so
this is
take
a feel
take
good
solace in that.
story today.
Yeah, or if you're working in insurance or anything else that you don't like, well, yeah, it goes by quicker than you think. Don't worry.
Don't worry.
Uh, uh,
You can pump out 15 years, no
yeah,
problem.
you can knock out 16, 17 years. Don't even worry about it. It'll take care of itself.
No,
Once it gets rolling,
yeah.
you're good.
This is the
Uh,
story of two
yeah.
Generation Xers, let me tell you. And the one thing that I'm digressing a bit, but going back to like a younger, this guy was like in his early 20s, making some good coin as a realtor. He's investing and whatever. And he's like trying to insulate himself from anything happening. And I'm trying to say to him, like, you can, but like the one thing that I think we both have, and it's because we're from the not only just the group we're from and where we're from, but it's the Rocky generation, is that really to make it through any of these types of adversities, you have to be like, look, I'm just not going to stop swinging. You're just not, I'm just going to keep getting back up. And I'm just going to, like, if
Mm-hmm.
it's between
Mm-hmm.
me and you, it's going to be you. And it's not sort
Mm-hmm.
of, now when we talk about more of a grinding mentality where I'm like, yeah, look, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
want this to happen, but I'm going to be fighting you the whole way, just the whole way. And I'm going to
Well,
keep getting back up. And it's that sort of grinder mentality that I think that resilience that really gets you through those moments in life that knock you down.
yeah. Although I would say, what is your alternative
Well, some people
to?
just lay down and die.
Well,
They
I
just,
mean, that's a weird way to go. I mean, because I know I do agree with you, except that I don't consider it a fight.
Mm.
Like because I'm like, your alternative is dying. So
Yeah.
like
Well, some
you'd
people
just
just
be
give
like,
up. I think some people give up.
yeah.
They give up on their dreams. They give up on
Oh
uh
no, but sometimes giving up on your dreams is sensible. But to the idea of continuing your shit is
living.
it seems normal to me.
You're living your dream. So you grinded out your 15 years in insurance, and
Uh-huh.
then you became a full-time comedian, and you've
Yes,
living the dream ever since.
I guess so. Yeah, no, I mean, doing comedy is a lot of fun. And but it presents you with the same kind of challenges of everything in life and particularly comedy is a good example of show businesses. People want to be in it. So the motivation is not really money. So when that's the case, you have a lot of people that will do stuff for free because they want to be in it. So it's like if you're doing tiling, there's no such thing as tiling for exposure. You know what I mean? Like nobody's like tiling, oh, like I'll come in and tile a little. Nobody does that because they all get paid because they don't want to tile.
Yes.
Um, they won't tile just for fun, whereas they will do comedy just for fun. So
Well,
it's
it's a
a, it's a,
passion. It's an art.
right. Yes, it's an art, but it's also
Never.
it's one of well, you see with social media and everything, people like attention, and so it's attractive to them. And people, and for comedy, people like to have their voices heard. So it's just one of those things where you have to find your ways to make money because it's not kind of like set up for you, like tiling is. Tiling is lucrative the whole time.
Yeah.
Um, not to rag on Tylers, but I'm just, I'm saying you're not doing it for free.
Well, I can appreciate that. And I think from this story, we can see that, real estate was, let's say, the engine that funded your passion, that allowed you to go into, I mean, it started with a full-time job in insurance, which wasn't glamorous, that got you the money
No.
that you invested, first in stocks and in mutual funds, and then your down payment at a decent time when it grew, and being a property investor, and that's really funded your passion. But you've been very
Mhm.
successful as a comedian. You've been
Mhm.
doing it full time for 20 years now. And not only that, but you're a highly acclaimed comedian. You dropped your first album in 20, what's our year there? 2019.
Mhm.
The Abyss Stares Back, and it was your first album, and it was amazingly received, and you got your first, and I'm gonna say first of many Juno nominations, um,
Sure. I hope
in
so.
2020. And just so that everybody knows, I'm gonna drop the link because you can download that album as well. And that was done through comedyrecords.ca, wasn't it?
Yes. Yes, Comedy Records I'm with. You can find the album I think to buy or whatnot on comedyrecords.ca or my website montyscott.com
Awesome.
and you
And
can find it
I was gonna say
you
it's
can find
still
it on SiriusXM. If you listen to SiriusXM is a great way to access it as well.
and what's that channel number on SiriusXM? There's so many channels.
168, but in Canada I think it's the only comedy channel.
Awesome.
It's the Comedy Club.
So talk to us a little bit about dropping your first album and having it so well
Hmm.
received, and what's that like?
Uh, Good question. I mean, I don't I don't really feel anything as a person. So it's hard to know like for that album it was a lot of material I'd done for a long time that I knew was good. And so I was happy to I got a good recording of it because I did it at Absolute Comedy, which you should check out as well. I think listeners at Young and Eglinton. I did it there, and it was a really good audience. And I did it over. Actually, Nicole, you were there
I
for
think
that
it was there one
show.
night when you were recording.
No, you were at the show that is the majority of the album,
Oh, fantastic.
I believe. It was, which is the because I recorded it all week, and it was the audiences are smaller until the early show on Saturday is the biggest audience, and it was. And I don't know that it was my absolute favorite performance, but I used almost all of the jokes from there because the audience was so great, and
It was a
could
great night.
you couldn't really forego that reaction was too much. So I was like, well, that's from the time I first recorded on Wednesday or Thursday. I'm like, well, that's we got the album. So it was nice that I was able to record it, numerous times, and then Saturday ended up being the thing. And so it was a great set, worked really well, and then we taped it, and I'm like, I definitely didn't expect any. acclaim from it. So that was a really great surprise, and I was really, you know, it's great. It was
Yeah.
nice to be
Well, I'm glad I was at the
nominated like that.
live event because I think that that's something that's really cool too. And definitely, if you can check out Absolute Comedy, that's a great venue and it's a nice size.
Hmm. Hmm.
That, like you feel the interaction and the energy and the vibe from people, and you
Well,
know,
that is live performance. That's just the way it is. You know, that's why there's no real. It's hard to capture it on any kind of recording because of the energy. You know.
yeah, the energy is cool. And
Hmm.
that goes back, that leads us into, another acclaim that you had as you were the president of CAST, which is the Canadian Association of Stand-Up and Sketch Comedians, which is a
Yes.
great honor. And, that leads us right into the pandemic because you were actually the president between, what did we say, 2020 and 2023, which was
Yes.
during the pandemic. And,
Hmm.
your industry was absolutely affected because of the nature of those live performances.
Hmm.
Um,
Yes. Yeah.
so tell me, as president, sort of some of the things that were going on at that time and things that you were able to do for, your colleagues and yourself.
Well, I mean, I guess it's a lot and it's little. In that, you know, for the pandemic, fortunately, the Canadian government stepped up and um, funded a lot of people like comedians that obviously couldn't do their job.
Yeah,
So, with those benefits, comedians weren't so badly off, and I'm surely for many of them they were making more money than they would ordinarily to get $2,000 a month. You know, so they were like monetarily it wasn't an issue because of that. But also, you know, otherwise it's entirely decimated. You know, it affected everybody terribly for comedy because, you know, I always say that the people on the low man on the totem pole, maybe you're just starting to get a little bit of a foothold in doing stand up, and then it's shut down. And
yeah,
then you look at the old guys who are, you'd say, doing great, but maybe they are putting that money away for their retirement. Like they're doing like relatively big shows and making good cash, but they're like they need that cash. They're not going to be able to do it forever. So everyone from one end to the other and in between were like they didn't really need to give away 3 years of their, you know, of their either development or their retirement or anything in between.
yeah.
So it definitely, you know, it sucked. Um,
And then you guys travel a lot too, because I
mhm,
could say, you travel all over North America to do shows, and
mhm.
travel was so shut down at that point too. So I mean, not only just live events, but it's like it's all the sort of avenues of livelihood there for you.
Well, yeah, but it's like travel to where
Yeah,
in that case 'cause there's no shows. So yeah, travel shut down, but it's like that was like incidental in that there's no shows.
yeah,
So so yeah, the but the truth was I took over at that time and I was just trying to kind of keep the ship steady. There wasn't a hell of a lot to do in that time period. Like we one thing that Sandra Badlini, who was the former president, had kind of spearheaded. We put together um, a fund for to give to comedians as a COVID relief, and it was like 30 grand we gave out, which was really cool.
nice.
I didn't think we'd get that much, so I didn't even really want to do it. But the idea we got it, and we're able to actually hand out like $500 to practically everybody who asked. Everybody who asked was I was yeah, I was really happy with that. And then you know, as it went along, um the various things like Cask is now in Unifor, which is you know, the biggest kind of what do you call it? Like entrepreneurial union.
Nice. Yeah, because
Um
prior to, I think Sandra was the inaugural president, wasn't she? Like,
yes, yes. Hmm.
And so there was only one president before you. I mean, this is an
Hmm.
association that, and while Sandra was doing that, you were highly involved in it as well as a
Yeah.
member.
Hmm.
Um, you guys basically lobbied to put together this association that didn't exist prior.
No, no, Sandra's the founder of it, and I was in it, as so I guess I'm a founder too, in that I was there, and kind of giving support to it. And as it went along, I ended up being, she'd done a lot in it, and she stepped down, and I was like the last kind of founding member, and I felt it was really on me to take it over,
Mhm.
and especially it was a pandemic, so it's like,
Well,
so
great
I
year.
did it.
Like you did
I'm
some
sorry.
good stuff. I mean, it was
Yeah,
great that the
I think so.
association is there.
Yeah.
Um, put a lobby for, your industry, which was completely affected, so that you had a
Well, and it's never been lobbied for before,
yeah, which is
you know.
fantastic. And now,
Yeah.
like I said, you're now part of a larger group for,
Yeah.
union sort of rights, and you're
It's
recognized
really good that
as a group of employed people. That's a
yes. Yeah, rather than being miscreants. Yes. No, 100%.
healthy crew
Like
of
that
bandits.
is that didn't happen when I was the president, Unifor, but we were working towards it. So that was one of the things. A number of things we were kind of working towards, kind of came to fruition, a little bit after I had stepped down. So I felt, I was very pleased with that in that a lot of the goals I had, long-term goals that I had for being president kind of came, to fruition, say a little bit after, but you're just like, wow, if you're trying to run anything and the things you're hoping for happen in a relative short term of what you're doing, you're like pretty pleased with it. So I was pleased with my tenure, and I'm happy to have stopped.
That's great. Well, that's a good
Yeah.
point for us to stop. I know you have another podcast today as a busy full-time comedian.
Oh
I'm
yes.
so grateful to have had this conversation with you about real estate, about entrepreneurship, giving away a few family secrets as well in there. Dramas and traumas. It wouldn't be a Scarborough tale without that. But definitely, for everybody who's watching, definitely check out and download The Abyss Stares Back, that album, and you can check that on comedyrecords.ca. We're going to put the links below. You also want to check out Monty on his podcast. Where is that bar cart, which
Mhm.
is a weekly special? You can search it up on YouTube and Spotify, and he's doing that with a bunch of his comedian friends. Always a good time. And you can also find him on his website, so montyscott.com. And what's your Instagram handle? Monty Mofo Scott.
Yes. Yeah. Monty Mofo Scott. Yes.
That's it.
Instagram, or I mean, I suppose Twitter, but I'm not really on Twitter, and
Yeah.
Threads. I think it's all Monty Mofo Scott. So,
Fantastic.
um,
Well, thank you so much for coming out today and making it a little lighter. And I take from you, and I say this to people in real estate, although I remember you saying it in comedy, which is if we're not having a good time, what are we doing?
yes, that
So
is a comedic saying for sure, but it's for life. I mean, every time, whenever you're doing something and you're not having fun, you really got to ask yourself, what am I doing it for? You know?
absolutely. And the
Mm.
other one I take from you, and I've said before, and people just freaking eat it up, is this is a basement, not a fairy tale.
Yes, well, that is a rent in places. It's not a fairy tale.
The basement, not a fairy tale.
Hmm.
Well, thanks very much, and we'll talk soon.
Well, thank you, Nicole. It's been a lot of fun.